The hip hop writer is a creator, composing understanding words of cultured brilliance, powering a rebalance of the elements equally, pages of rejuvenated reaffirmation, simply the almighty leadership of insightful craft work that stands to build through any confrontation born to be. Yet, his daily duty is as a journalist that questions properly, uses his ears for the good to filter the real. And as the art decays by dilution, he concentrates the best again and again, exposing it in the print. Today's journalist and tomorrow's historian, he listens to share. Here is that necessary attempt, executed again and again and again and again. This is the Power Right Show on S.STREET Media. This is your brother, the lone low life with the home-sewn garment. The Boricua with the build, the true and living, stepping in score, Sunez, Allah, a.k.a. Skillustrator Low. And we here on S.STREET Media, the evolution of media. So I say every intrigue will have its own show, every incredible thought will have its own episode, and every timeless insight will be archived. Yo, did you know, listeners, that you've been listening to the only show in history on the hip-hop writer element that I, a veteran of over 20 years helping to pioneer, am hosting? Yeah, I made this shit up, so it's only right that I host it, right? But yo, everyone that has been a journalist, this is a thought that just came to me as I came on the air. Everyone that has always been a journalist in my experience doing hip hop, they've always used it as a springboard, you know, a springboard to get to something else. You know, they had degrees, journalism degrees, and it was always about getting to from this magazine that is music and always to the loftier magazine, though. These are all noble things, endeavors to strive for, of course. Some of them are not well-intentioned. A lot of them are. But very few have said, you know what, I'm writing because that's what I want to do. Like, I'm at what I want to do. Instead of going somewhere else to do more of what I really would like to write, I actually want to do this type of writing and change the way that you do it. That was my intent. You know, there's all types of other things I would love to write in my life that I am writing that is not regarding hip-hop. If you know me, you know. If you're just a student of mine, you know all the plus lessons I've written and all the other things. But changing the way this hip-hop thing is written, changing the way journalism is, and also documenting hip-hop journalism with respect to all journalism, you know. It falls prey to a lot of the faults of standard journalism that the Western world does against our black and brown people. Except we don't notice it because it's usually one of our black and brown people writing the mess, you know, or saying the mess. So listen, this hip-hop writer element, though, is based on what I call art on art and science on music. The details on the music, not saying, hey, you know, after a while, a lot of these magazines, the Source, Vibe, and all of them, they kept writing reviews, and it wasn't just one paper. It wasn't just one magazine. It became a standard in all music. I don't care if you're Rolling Stone and all of that, because with less respect for the music, there was less detail. With jazz, they had to know what notes were being played. They had to know what styles. They had to know the quality of the solo. But with hip hop, you could just get some guy to write, though, this is a hot beat, and this one's a banger, and this one's ill. And then that becomes the detail of it, though. Like, you go to the store, though, and you put your money down on something that says banger, and that's why I fucked up in 1995. It's embarrassing. I'm going to throw something embarrassing out there. It's 1995, 96, and I bought Domino's album. I bought fucking Domino's album. This West Coast nigga with one hit. This is what happens when New York niggas, we try to love the West Coast, and they just made me blow 10 on Domino. This guy's album was worse than the Loonies. You know, Loonies' legacy is white people going, I've got 5 on it, brother. I've got 5 on it. Remember that shit? That's the legacy of the Loonies. Like, the music wasn't that good. Like, you just can't sample Parliament hand clap snares all night long. And that wasn't a cue to sample Mary Jane Girls either. You know what I mean? But the thing about it, though, and I'm I'm being crazy with it, though, is that a lot of these segments here are kind of like, the hip hop writer can't have respect if he doesn't create, but also doesn't really know the music and have a useful insight, not just describing it, because that's just one lower level. But if they can't describe it, then they can't bring a new insight to it. So like now in today's time, the journalist is a failure because everybody can hear this stuff. So okay, so you need to read an article, so he tells you it's a banger. It depends on the respect that you have for the individual. But what happens to the skill of reading about music where you totally disagree with the musician, but you actually get some insight out of it? You know, I learned that first with Ralph Ellison. You know what I mean? Ralph Ellison, the legendary author of Invisible Man, he wrote jazz writings, and he was a damn hater. And he hated Miles Davis and that whole 50s era. He, you know, the brashness that they had, especially Miles. And I'm a Miles Davis man. That's where I go into jazz, and then I branch off to everything. But that was my in to jazz. You know what I mean? Like Bob Marley was my in to reggae. You know what I mean? Like maybe for me, we were just talking about off air, Gangstar and KRS-One were my in to everything. You know what I mean? And then and Rakim. You know, like they're your ins to being addicted. But when we talk about journalism, though, and for it to be an element, it can't just have these elements of art and science or music. It has to be creative on many levels. So I always like to share some of the prose and poetic prose that I write. I got some today because I want to balance out this show because, boy, we're just going into the music, man. You know? So the disclaimer is, and with all these shows, is that, listen, you may not like what I'm saying, though, but there's a reasoning behind the music. There's a detail behind the music, and there's a reasoning behind the likes and dislikes that are being categorized here for some kind of insight so we could learn more about the music. And let's keep it real. The way I'm detailing this music, even the artists themselves could get something about it, can see something about their own music, the way it is perceived, what they are actually doing, and what they could do greater if the egos are not gigantic. But I doubt that. I'm just here to give my thoughts and insights. But this piece went like this. I'm not going to say where it's from, though. You know, but it goes, low but beholden. I only hear scarred snippets in the snare coffin, chimed by pretty hiccups. Vagaries of rape abound, so I clothe loved arts with the loyalty of tougher principles. So they carry 'em off the hustles of homeless kings that pronounce the edicts of wicked letters. Teaching in varied caps, patches, and cookies, using these thoughts on a song to sing the flag, universal. So as I write like a goat, what muddy animal should y'all be? It's a little thought. I just threw that out there. But, you know, I want to say the last show we had Infinite Mind on, that's Infinite 7 Mind, no spaces, written correctly. You can find him on the internet, you know, all the social media, and link up with him. Go to S.STREET Media and see that great freestyle that he had. The show should, you know, and check out the show that we had. We had the show, we mainly focused because he not only is a great MC, but also an educator. We focused on LeBron School. And it's going to be the subject of something I'm about to go into in the next segment. But I just want to give right now this salute to Infinite Mind and stress a point that we made in the last episode that really, to me, is a key, a positive key to why I call this the invisible renaissance, this 2010 era of music. Because, hey, you know, one of the major things about this music and the major principles that I saw, that I always see in Infinite Mind's music, that is Infinite 7 Mind's music, is that there's a major principle he's lived by that is ideally linked with what I'm calling the invisible renaissance. You know what I mean? He's living out the wonder of all those greatest ideas exposed in the music of the classic era, the 80s, the 90s, you know, all this stuff. Like, we always listen to stuff about the knowledge of stuff. Well, what was that? You know what I mean? Like for me, the Brand Nubian gave me ideas and had me quoting the knowledge degree, you know, the maker, the owner, the cream of the planet Earth, and father of civilization and God of the universe. But it didn't hit until little skits later in the Everything is Everything album. Those skits really impacted me and became a physical thing to go seek, particularly for some reason when I heard Duck Season and I heard RZA say, I got my queen and my seed, but nothing compares to the 120 lessons. And I was like, what the hell is that? Because you ain't get a queen and a seed anytime. We go get that. We know what that is, but I don't know what the 120 lessons is. And these little clues sparked me to go learn things, and it sparked me to associate things that were already associated. So when you associate 5%ers with kung fu and martial arts, like because of Wu-Tang, that already was a reality. Because in the history of the 5% Nation of Gods and Earths, the martial arts were a binding force for the gods in the beginning when they were learning from Allah the Father. So it only made sense that the RZA would be so attracted, to martial arts movies, and then throw that appeal in there. And then link it up, though, because martial arts is also the study of the principles that go in with being an honorable warrior. So then that expands. But when I see people like Infinite Mind, I see people that didn't get to always endeavor into their career deeply, not because they weren't good enough, but because the real life ideas in the music, and I said this last week, but it's so important to say, those real life ideas, the knowledge of self, martial arts of Kung Fu, the multiple disciplines that it has, from Wing Chun to Qigong, all together in an understanding as they were meant to be, and they were going to seek it out. They weren't just listening to these great MCs. They're like, yo, he mentioned it, but I'm going to go see what it is. He mentioned this historical figure. I'm going to go see who Marcus Garvey is, who Malcolm X is. Daily Operation had Malcolm X in the cover. And you go, well, who is that guy? Who is that guy? What was he about? And you go research. You got to find out who it is. And it was a different endeavor because you'd have to go in the street to find people. And not saying that the internet and things like that ruined, and the digital world ruins it completely, ruined it completely, because more so probably the Western world disrespect of the elder. But it was most likely an elder that could have taught you those things, not just the internet. You know what I'm saying? But to see people like Infinite Mind actually go into these fields, and also being a student of history, an analyzer of our oppression, a daily revolutionary, not the Saturday there's a march revolutionary. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, we got a march on Saturday. We're going there, and that's okay. That's okay, but that's like shooting hoops on Saturday. You know what I mean? That's a weekend warrior. You know what I'm saying? That's a weekend warrior. That's not really like the revolutionary talking. The guy that changes his food and diet because every time he goes to the store, he wants to make an impact. Every time he may not be able to change his clothing, but he's going to know how it all came together. You know what I'm saying? Little details of his daily life. And they're going to be always thinking of their problems and thinking of how to propose solutions. That's been the life of knowing Infinite Mind. And I just wish there was more time brothers like that could endeavor into making music, because then, we just get these, let's keep it real, we get these waves of more talented artists that talk about deeper things, but don't know shit about it. They don't know shit about it, though. They say, yeah, I mentioned the 5% stuff because of this, that, and the other, but they didn't go into the study of shit. So they're not supposed to know anything. They can't know anything. They didn't go anywhere to do it, though. They mentioned this kung fu stuff, but they didn't go through anything. They might have read a book, but you can't read a book with 2 pictures of a punch, because the death in the fight comes between those 2 pictures. Trust me. You got the punch here by the chest, and you got the punch out. Trust me, you get fucked up in between. That's where you get fucked up. Everybody gets fucked up in between those 2 punches, those 2 pictures of that one punch, But all that is being said about the integrity of certain things and stuff like that, I got to talk against one thing, and it's slowly burgeoning. I don't want to name names because there are people that I even looked up to, and it shows that sometimes when we go into new endeavors, just because journalism sucks doesn't mean that you can dive into the shit. And so what I like to say is there's a difference between celebrity commentators and journalists of insight. The problem is there's almost no journalist of insight. You know, there's no journalists talking about music that have heard all these things. When I think of the guys that know hip hop music that aren't MCs, I think of brothers that just collect. You know, collectors like my brother Max Figolo and, you know, brothers like that because, you know, they're collecting. You know what I'm saying? They're collecting all the records. You know what I mean? But the journalists, they have, you know, very little idea. They'll pick their niche, though, because they don't really know how to cover the whole landscape. You know what I mean? But in this segment, it leads to this segment of two key ideas. That it's one key idea, but two words that you hear a lot. And this is a media mutation segment. And the words are something that is not privy just to hip hop, like relevant and shit. You know, like we said, the bitches, because, you know, relevant is a hip hop term. Because if you say that in sports, you go, yeah, this ball player's not relevant. He averages 30 fucking points. He's pretty relevant. You could measure their relevance. You know what I'm saying? But in hip hop, there are select terms in the media. But in this one, this is a universal term in media, but it's being used in this situation, though, and I have to say it because hip hop commentary segues into the commentary of other stuff. It segues into the commentary of real life because we're talking about real life all the time, and we're expected to have some real integrity as far as representing a real life that is close to our own. If I was to say in the person of an MC, like they're expected to represent something that is valid in their own life. You know what I mean? But when we had last week's episode about the last show about the LeBron school, one of the major things was this idea about LeBron versus Jordan. And mind you, you could throw all these comments in the SoundCloud because I'm not going into it and giving more detail why Jordan's the GOAT. You guys want participation trophy collectors to be the GOAT, then you go ahead. But a nigga got to win to be the GOAT. You know what I'm saying? He's got to win, and there's a certain push to win. But in this idea and we could say because Trump did it, trumping LeBron and pumping up Jordan, right? Everybody counters to try to do the opposite, right? And one of the things about it, right, was I saw people talk about the rumor of Michael Jordan having prisons, and I saw one celebrity commentator. Well, you figure it out if you really do your research. This celebrity commentator said that he mentioned, and it was acceptable because he mentioned that Jordan was rumored to have invested in prisons, and he never answered to it. He never denied it. So this media mutation is on the word rumored or rumor, right? The idea when you say something's rumor or someone is alleged. You know that these are two major words that are a foundation of most of the racism that media is able to do. You know? Hey, look, this nigga right here is real talented, though, but he allegedly, boom, boom, boom. This good black man is doing something right here, but he is rumored to have, he's allegedly. You know what I mean? So what it does is it allows you to assume certain things about the black man that is not true, the brown man that is not true, right? It's literally what you could say about what Trump was saying about Mexicans or anybody. Like, hey, listen, I'm not saying that they're all rapists, but they're allegedly rapists. That's what he's saying. You know, they're rumored to be rapists. This would be the same thing. This would be the same exact thing. But listen, we deal, especially this celebrity commentator should know that any journalist deals with the idea of knowledge, making sure the facts are straight, and then coupling them up with insight after you make sure the facts are verified. And the less that you have verified facts, the less that you opine about them. You see, there's a scale. The more knowledge you have as a journalist, the more that you can opinionate on it and give insights. The less that you have about it, the less that you give insights about it. You see? And that scale keeps everything a lot more righteous and keeps the listener a little bit more open-minded, because the listener is listening far more quicker than you are. And if we're quick to prepare, then it's two people talking fast, listening fast, and it's a whole mess. Here's the thing, right? If someone said it, this celebrity commentator says, Jordan, I didn't say that Jordan did invest in prison. I said he was rumored to. But then he also says, after, in the end of that, says, but was he actually never denied it. So here's what I'm saying, though. Like, you see the oddity in this. You say he was rumored to be the guy invested in prisons. But that means that you're saying you're not sure, but you want to say it. But then you say it might have some weight because he never denied it. So wait a minute. You don't have knowledge of this, but you happen to have knowledge that he never denied it. You see, you don't have to prove this one because you use rumor to lead into that. What I'm saying is you didn't give proof of either. You didn't give proof of the rumor, and you didn't give proof of his denial of it. The thing is that a basic internet search shows massive amounts, about 3 or 4 easy fact-checking articles saying that was not the Michael Jordan that we're speaking about that invested in prisons. It was an Oregon guy, some white man in Oregon, right? But here's the thing, right? To show you the difficulty of why this is necessary to do in journalism, if you read Roland Lazenby's book on Michael Jordan, it's a 650-page book. He goes into why Jordan played for the Wizards, right? And it had nothing to do with him wanting to get the laces back on and compete, even though many sports commentators will give you that line. Many of the reasoning had to be because he had to raise the revenue of the Wizards franchise in order to be allowed as a deal, so he could actually be a part, have some kind of stake in the ownership. What happened was that the word was not bond on the Wizards ownership part. So after Jordan raised the revenues of the Wizards to a high supreme level that they never had before, the like and dislike, whatever it was for Michael Jordan, allowed them not to made them feel they didn't have to keep their word bond, and then they fired him. And so we see him quiet, trying to get that stake in ownership somewhere else, and now we see it with the Hornets. So, sometimes we assume the road of difficulty of certain individuals, but the road that Jordan was on is one that needs and actually demands less high profile. It demands one to be incognito and under the radar to achieve it. Whereas LeBron's efforts to make a school are actually endeavors that, even though LeBron pumps himself too much for every damn thing he does, right, on the court, it does make sense for him to do that with that. And that's one point. So this term rumored and alleged, be careful, black and brown brothers and sisters, when you use that. When you say someone is rumored to have done this, alleged to have done that. And don't give me the R. Kelly shit, because that's basically a freaking fact, because we got video of that shit. That's more like Rodney King territory. You know what I'm saying? That's Rodney King territory, We've got video for that. But when it comes to other stuff, when you start to say someone's rumored or alleged to do something, you're insinuating something quite profound, and you allow it to actually piggyback other insinuations of supposed fact onto it. Because if it was fact-checked that Jordan didn't do that, why would he have to deny it? And why would he go against his entire under-the-radar approach to garnering wealth and stake and ownership in the club, which he failed at before, just to deny a rumor? See, people aren't really thinking, and it's not thinking, it's just they're not doing research. That's why I have to have rules in this shit. You have to have rules, and a lot of these rules are based on knowledge. Knowledge, and then you wisdom, and then you give your insight, your understanding. But I digress from that. You know what I mean? Another addendum I wanted to talk about, though, was this gentrification of music that I mentioned, because people asked about it. Gentrification of music has a whole bunch of terms, but I referenced it in the terms in a lot of ways to artists charging $100 for an 8 or 9 track album. You may feel that you're worth it, and when you get that money, it is well deserved, because the guys doing it, a lot of them have quality product. But you have successfully cannot deny that you are gentrifying the music, because now only a certain target market can afford to drop 100 on your music. This isn't the days of the 80s where all the dope rappers were going to did shows that were funded by drug dealers with big pockets. You know what I mean? This is not the the 80s. This is not the late 80s where Run DMC shows in New York City and the boroughs were really funded by dealers and shit. No, this is different. It's a different time now. So I know that the consumer is oftentimes a piece of shit, but it's having a reactionary effect because now the musician is often treating the listener like a custy, and I see it more and more so. You know, like a custy, like it's 100 though, and if you're not in that tax bracket to afford this, well, I'm sorry. The tax bracket for hip hop is supposed to be slum. You know what I'm saying? So anytime you go against that, understand that you're going against a countercultural approach. You can't really have the two. But again, there's more to deal with that. You know what I'm saying? But this particular episode, right? I really wanted to venture a lot into music and artists and stuff. You know, so many albums came out, so many albums that don't get talked about, and I don't get to write about a lot of albums because I like to write about things in detail. I like to give it an art. I like to make it an art canvas. I like to really use it as an expression of ideas about that artist as well, and give some ideas on science of music. What this show enables me to do is really build on a lot of other stuff I wouldn't get to immediately. So let's go through some of these albums though, and we're not even up to date because I know there's more releases that have come out since you'll even hear this. But these albums have already gone by the wayside if it's released about 2 months ago. And you know, it's a shame in some respects, you know. I'm gonna start with this group from Jersey. This group called Augmented Authors. Authors with a Z at the end. Augmented written the way you spell it. Augmented Authors, and the album's called Table of Contents, right? And they're from New Jersey. They're from New Jersey, and the MCs are Lit Green and Pappy Natson, you know, and I found it to be, as a duo, an excellent contrasting MC duo with Lit's deep tone and then Pappy's higher pitch and hype cadence. You know what I mean? You know, their pacing stays calmly in the pocket. You know, it's at a slow to mid-tempo. You know, despite track pacing that rides the grooves well, because sometimes, you know, when the groove is a little bit, when the groove is real funky, a lot of MCs will pick up that tempo, you know? Whereas these guys, they tend to keep that tempo the same, even if the groove is more hype. So remember that an MC sometimes will pick up the speed if a groove is funkier, right? More things are happening to those drums, more things are happening to that bass line. Even if the tempo is the same as he usually rhymes. But this doesn't happen. So on this very short album, it's only about 20 minutes. 8 real songs, so it's between whatever you want to call it, an EP, an album, whatever you want to call it. But to me, what I love about it is that their pacing stays calmly in the pocket at these said slow and mid tempos. You know what I mean? Through all the grooves, the production focuses on a lot of bass grooves. Like I was saying, the bass grooves are really where you hear this stuff as Jump, like Jump. That's the song Jump. And there's some good sample game, you know, samples that I noticed, like, you know, the main ingredient lays fate on If This World, which, by the way, is a great song, man. It's a great song to sample. The original is incredible. But for that group, there's nothing whack from them. But I would say that probably the real keeper, the song that shows their real talent is where it goes beyond clever wordplay, because most of the album is just real clever wordplay, you know, that's very formidable. But there's an exceptional song called Free, and that's really what you want to go check out. So their Bandcamp is Lit Green, LITTGREEN 1, as in the number 1, .bandcamp. So litgreen1 .bandcamp.com, and that's lit with two T's, and one with that's the numeral 1, you know. Boy, I was off air though, and I was. It's on my list. I'm gonna tackle it. I'm gonna throw a jumper. Um, Sometimes when you talk about music though, you tend to offend because people, they're always on their um, they're on their shit though. They're fucking emotional and shit. Let's be honest, because they don't hear any type of criticism that's useful. So everything could be a hater. Journalism themselves, the journalistic field though, has ruined the depth of criticism. So everybody could just label somebody a hater. But when we go into some of these albums, I want to go into one that people don't know about, and I'd like you to make your own decisions. Is why I give it. The Last Emperor, right? He actually came out with an album with what's his name? With Hack Fillmore, right? And Hank Fillmore. And it's called Jungle Gym Season 1. And one of my brothers told me to check it out. And I actually was disappointed in this from Last Emperor because I felt like in doing this jungle gym metaphor, like a safari hunter going through the jungle, and it ended up being grossly a 50-minute extended metaphor of a safari hunter killing MCs in the jungle. Boy, that shit got tiring after a while. You know what I'm saying? Like, because, the metaphor is something that I think of Jizza when I think about extended metaphors, right? Jizza used to keep his extended metaphors like Animal Planet and others to one song. But if you extend the metaphor really good, what happens is that you can use it less and less. So the better you use the metaphor, the less that you want to use it. So that's a good thing, but it extinguishes itself pretty quickly because it gets tired. The device gets tired. We end up listening and we're actually figuring out the bar, the nature of the bar. And that could become as boring as anything. And the problem is that a metaphor like that in this day and time is not strong enough, though. You know what I mean? I think when you extend a battle metaphor for a whole album like that, you make a boom bap album that white kids like. You know what I mean? Because it doesn't offend. It's we're not killing white people. We're killing MCs. MCs is like when G.I. Joe used to kill the robots. That shit. Fuck, they could kill all the robots they want, but I want to see your body, like one of the Cobra human soldiers get bodied. You know what I mean? Then it would be something for real. You know what I mean? But in this case, though, a lot of hip hop is like not really punch worthy. It's not really intense. It loses a lot of its brashness with that. And I think a skit like Skeleton Army, if you go listen to that, will be a perfect example. You know what I mean? And he did it. Emperor did it for the whole album, Jungle Gym, and again, there's nothing whack on it, but there's nothing that I would go back to. It's a really predictable record, and I didn't think that the beats, a lot of drum game that was not really that layered. A lot layered. It becomes one of the faults that people talk about with boom bap when it becomes stale. He could do so much better. The snares were predictable. They were exactly what you see go on certain things. So I was a little disappointed with that, But speaking about stuff that when you listen deeper, it goes so far back into embracing the earlier era that it becomes wildly oddball. Like odded like dope, And this one is about the god A-Prime. This album is by the god A-Prime. It's called Darker Realms. Now, in hip-hop, if you're in the New York area and stuff, and you just follow your hip-hop real good, or you're one of the gods and you just know, there's two A-Primes that rap. There's A-Prime of Rochester, right? And he has, a couple of releases. He has, the Negroes Only Pies, Volume 1, that he has on SoundCloud and stuff. And he's a burgeoning, up-and-coming rapper. MC, very talented, very talented. And the other A-Prime I'm talking about is actually from what we call C. Medina, Chicago, And they're both really good. They have unique voices. And A-Prime's voice, it's funny because he's so-called Latino. He's Boricua, right? And he actually was an MC that was told to keep it light. Maybe he should sing Latin music because his voice, which is extremely, extremely deep, a deep baritone. He's a baritone. Can't wasn't fitting what people thought would be the expectation when they sell them, you know. And again, that goes with what I've been saying, as this being a very, very, um, a very pigeonholed music where it is sold as an African American music, and the entire diversity of the black diaspora isn't embraced. So if you look African American and are not, you has to. It would be better off if you just went in that niche. You know what I'm saying? Look at whether it's the pop world, Nicki Minaj, or whether it's the underground world. It happens all the time. You know what I mean? A lot of people you think are African American are really Caribbean, English, from the English Caribbean. A lot of them are, and some of them are actually from the Latin Caribbean. But in the other respect, if you were light skinned though, then you had no real draw. You had no real way in. But this album, Darker Realms, what makes it dope, right? And I built with the God a long time about the way he made this exceptional record to me. I'm gonna give you some of his ideas as far as the focus, right? There were two things that he was trying to get at when making this album. One was he was very tired of the horrid sloppiness and abuse of our 5% nation of gods and earths, powerful influence in hip hop music and culture. So it felt like everything became a gimmick. Everything was being used but not really respected, so the depth wasn't really there. And his was to show that a little bit more, completely sincerely. The second thing was that was his problem with the massive drift away from the pure hardcore rugged record. So on this record, right, it's an album that demands deeper listening because it sounds like it's done in a basement. You know what I mean? It's done in a dungeon, and it probably was. But and it's got the majority of the album was done in an SP12. So it's got a real deep tone to it, and there's a thickness to it. So like all the drums sound filtered. They have that filtered drum sound. Like it sounds like Black Moon, the first Black Moon sound album, Into the Stage, or the Smith and Wesson, the first Smith and Wesson. That real deep filtered basement sound. Like it's a 1, 2, and like the whole thing sounds like that. And then you might hear it better if you go down into that basement where shit is popping off. Because man, in the 90s, we had to go into some places like that, and that's the memories we get. That's why so many groups like EPMD and stuff, they used to always do skits where the hip hop was behind the door or behind some kind of cave and you had to go in, because that's what it was like when we were getting close to the venue. They're not like now where like it's all high, oh, it's Highline Ballroom, it's so nice, and if you pay you could eat a meal with a nice lady at the side. That wasn't what the fuck we was watching when we went to a show. You know what I mean? But a lot of it, he achieves what he wanted to do with the knowledge itself, because it's very anthemic to us gods with tracks like Death Coastin'. He actually samples really well the late great Firstborn Prince. Firstborn Prince was a direct student of Allah the Father when he was alive teaching, and even I had the honor of learning from him, and it was nice to hear him quoted in those songs really well. And then there's songs that are very deep. It take a lot of listenings to gather all the insights from it, like Hercules and the 23 Scientists, where he's metaphorizing Vignettes of the inside of the 120 lessons. He's also throwing in the Greek mythology, their actual roots, because this is what he was telling me, their roots, the actual roots of Hercules going back to Egypt. And he's putting in like a battle bar barrage, but also mixed with a warrior's creed, which is really like the essential theme of the whole album. And like I said, the vocals, they shift because of this dynamic process. The vocals are not going to be crisp from track to track. Like vocals from tracks like Operation Guillotine, they sound like that gritty basement I was talking about, where like the musty smell of vinyl, weed, and incense is all like merging as one type of smell. You know what I mean? Whereas others, though, they sound like the reasons old speakers were destroyed. You know what I mean? Like Red Rum and Coke. That song has such sharp snares, and if it shuffles, I'm telling you, if it shuffles Operation Green Guillotine and then goes into Red Rum and Coke, goodbye your speakers, because the sharpness of that snare is gonna bang your whole shit out. But it doesn't matter, right? People are using phone speakers and saying, this is a dope track. You know what I'm saying? So they're not really listening to the depth that would come along, inside a song. But a very dope album, and I think I'm gonna have to collect some of the insights we built on and make a conclusive piece on it. It's definitely a keeper. But because the brother's out there in C Medina doesn't really promote his stuff like I would hope that he would, or like brothers don't always get to do that. But if you look up Apreme, that's one word, APREME, go to bandcamp.com because I didn't get the exact link. Go to bandcamp.com and write either Apreme and look for the album Darker Realms, or just write Darker Realms with a Z at the end instead of S, and search inside Bandcamp, and you'll find that album in there. You know what I mean? It's a banger. It's a banger. I couldn't go on without mentioning that Bugsy the God and Don Pacino, when I had him as guests for shows, shows 7 and 8 of this Power Right show, I didn't have their album when I interviewed them. You know what I mean? Bugsy had just given it to me, so I didn't get the chance to listen to it. So as an addendum to that, the Bugsy the God album, One Nation Under God, the Don Pacino album, that was done with Bronze Nazareth, War Poetry 2, because it's their second album together with Bronze doing the beats. They don't disappoint at all. So there's so much more to say to them, but if you're not a fucking wimp and you actually do some training, you do some workout, you do a couple of push-ups a day, you want to get mad, you want to throw some shit, life sucks at moments, then this is the albums that you need and shit. You know what I mean? There's some stellar beats on both of these albums. No real beat filler. You know what I'm saying? No real beat filler. There's only songs you like more than others. Their albums are always a win-win. And just off the bat, that we talked about that tribute to Killer Sin when Don Pacino was here, and man, Dom, that really was an incredible track. You know what I mean? I gotta tell, I don't know how you did that green. I don't know how you did that without writing that shit out though. But it was great. You know what I mean? It was really great. That was one of the best songs on the album. But yo, I'm gonna be giving criticism fair and true. So I guess it has to go from the old to the new, brothers. So I gotta go with I gotta start talking about AG of Digging in the Crates. One of the greats. We were talking about him off air and stuff. He has an album out. It's also on Bandcamp called The Taste of Ambrosia, and my immediate disappointment was that AG. For those that don't know, if you follow him. If you get to follow him, his page on Facebook, or I don't know if he tweets all this stuff too, but his Facebook is pretty active. He's a flat earther, you know what I mean? He's a fucking flat earther, you know what I mean? And the only proof that I've seen him give out though, because he'll tell you that you're stupid if you think that the earth is not flat. He didn't tell me that because I don't argue with flat earthers though, you know what I mean? I don't do that. But his main argument to people was like, yo, so you think they landed on the moon? And my thing is like, what the fuck does the white man landed on the moon have to do with the earth being round or flat? The white man lies about everything. They have a history of lying though, so who cares if there's round or flat and shit like this? Brothers be saying this kind of stuff. They be believing in this flat earth stuff. Say the white man lied about this, but they lying to get every last date that they got the last 5 years. So I don't know what type of lies we're talking about. What are we talking about here? But if you follow flat earthers, they have a complex system to rationalize and explain away the concepts of why the earth is flat. So it's some kind of flat pizza that has a dome on it. It's got a dome. You know what I'm saying? It's got a fucking dome on it. You know what I mean? And it's the stupidest shit ever because it doesn't take into account gravity. You know what it doesn't take account? Let's destroy the myth in one day. Right, real quick, right? The flat earth is a conspiracy that the white man has been keeping upon all of us, right? So he's been selling us ways and configurations to deal with a round earth. We've all been duped. Here's the problem though. The average man, black, brown, yellow, white, they've all dealt with calculations at major moments in life. And we're not talking about GPS because they rationalize away GPS. That's the white man's computer. They'll tell you what they want to tell you where you are, but they're not using the real, right? Men have been lost at sea, right? Cartographers have been lost at sea. And there is no like, um, I don't believe them. This world is actually flat. How the fuck am I gonna get home? We better get that flat Earth map. It shit is real now. No, they are using calculations that would technically compute distances and computations based on a round Earth. A round Earth. So that means that all these cartographers throughout the sea, they would have gotten lost. They would have died. You see what I'm saying? And what are you supposed to say? You're supposed to say Columbus. Columbus got here and he thought the earth was flat. See? There you go. It worked for him. He's the only one that got here. Go ahead, black man. Tell me that the white man is the only one that knew how to get to America. You know what I'm saying? Tell me that. You know what I mean? Tell me that bullshit. But it needs more work. It needs more work. You know what's funny? We're so ready to disbelieve stuff that we don't really look into the viability of why something is true. By the way, if you believe in the flat Earth, as brothers that you're on your Hotep shit too, that means that every single aspect of the pyramids, the Giza pyramid, the Sphinx and all that, and how the light hits it at the same exact computations, all of that is off. And that means that it's not built on the equator. It's not perfectly built and simulated with the solstices. Oh, yeah. You got some work. But my disappointment was that on Taste of Ambrosia, I was like, I'm listening to it like an 18-track album and like, yo, I want to hear AG talk about this shit. Like, do a song like, I like my earth. I like my hoes flat like my earth. I like my, you know what I mean? Like, do something, you know? I like bitches with no tits and ass like my earth. You know what I mean? Piece of the earth, you so flat and lovely, you know, like nothing. I didn't hear anything about that, so I was disappointed. Why? Because that's his most important talking point. Alas, I think what has been exposed to social media is that most MCs don't talk about all the things that they think about. And a lot of the things that they think about and muse upon on social media are far more entertaining than what they rap about. So that's not the case with AG. He has a lot of stuff to say and a lot of clever ways to say it. He's one of the greats. And the album is very entertaining. It's just something I wish that he would have gone into just for my own, because I do not intend to ask him. You know what I mean? But since we're going there, in many respects, AG is also an example of someone that is influenced by the 5% Nation of Gods and Earth language, dialect, insights, but isn't a 5%er. I can personally attest that he's been at some of our parliaments, which are like our monthly reunions in Mecca here in Manhattan. They're at the Harriet Tubman School the majority of the year at the end of the month. But just because brothers go there and just because they use the language doesn't mean that they adhere to it over time. Because I'm sorry, if you're a flat earther and you think you got knowledge yourself, well, there's a lot of degrees. You're going to have to rewrite them. You're going to have to show and prove that they're not right and exact. But there's other cues too. There's other cues too in his music. But I'm just making that born because I'm going to have a segment, though. I got to have a segment on the 5%, just on the language, and he uses it wrong, he uses it right. It had nothing to do with who's good or bad as an MC. It's just so influential. People get wrong ideas about what was just said, and like, nah, that's not what we say, you know? So, yeah, so, yeah, or non-cipher. You know, I love Fife, but non-cipher is, you know, CL Smooth just non-cipher. Like, everybody says non-cipher. There's no non-cipher. You won't get that from me. Like, but, and nonetheless, though, AG, though, is one of the great slow flowers of all time. One of the great slow flowers, you know? He was doing it before Nas came out, before all these guys, the nice slow flow, you know? So, and he's got a lot of interesting songs, like the storytelling style and Price of Fame, you know? There's a lot of techniques on this album, you know? It's, again, like the best works in hip-hop, it's a very subtle recording. You got to listen to it. And the beats are there. They've got that sharp sound that has been the norm that showbiz has been giving, except he found it from different producers now, you know? So check that out. That's on the letters AGOFDITC. ag of ditc.bandcamp.com, you know? Now, I'm going to get into a little rant here. Not a rant, but a little commentary because I want to talk about two albums. Aguilar's new album, No Mercy for the Weak, and I want to talk about West Side Gun's Supreme Blientele, right? To talk about it, they merged together because of their beef. And just putting together my thoughts and everything like that, right? But let's go here first, right? The beef with West Side Gun is supposedly over, but here's what I saw, right? One, I saw a veteran when no one cared to see how, I saw a veteran in Aguilar that no one cared to see how deeply embedded he is in hip hop, in a lot of great hip hop works as a producer, as an MC, or just a consistent piece in those ciphers, right? And that last part is why we were taught to knowledge first, then wisdom. A lot of people, including West Side Gun, was on their assumptions that, you know, Aguilar hasn't done anything in hip hop or he's washed up and stuff. And it was that's a big mistake. It's not really true. You know what I mean? But rappers and MCs in general have all, from GOAT status to mortal contributors, you know, like Domino, who I mentioned, mortal contributor, have all had lines saying the dumbest shit or just stuff that was ration at the moment. That's everybody, okay? That's everybody. Everybody has had dumb lines. Everybody has said lines that were technically wrong. When you MC, you make mistakes because you're at a certain point in your intelligence where it's always fluctuating, hopefully always growing in that direction. But it's an emotional sport as well. You know, but we're still judging without good retrospect. We shouldn't be emotional, the one that's listening to it. We're still judging, you know, without any retrospect. So, you know, we end up being as sloppy as the statements we're judging. So with Aguilar, I had just had a definitive build with him on Toshi's Classic Storm Radio before this beef. And he said, you know, he spoke on his childhood friendship with P and his being there for P when it was time for him to go solo. And he had a few looking to help him develop him with his music tracks and time, right? Now let's remember that Sean P solo, this is important. Sean P becoming a solo artist was not a #1 draft pick. Labels were not going, oh shit, Sean P, you're going solo? I gotta sign you. Wasn't his life. Okay? He blew up out of the blue for people because it was amazing and unheard of. This was unheard of. He just, you know, his skill level, it ballooned, and no one expected it. So it wasn't like he was Leaders of the New School's Buster or Goody Mob CeeLo that they were recruited out, you know, and getting courted away from his crew by labels. So when Aguilar said that when Aguilar messed up saying he made Sean P after building with him for a few hours and airing the crux of his most articulate pronouncements of his love and experience working with P, I saw it as clearly emotional, and I just waited for a clarification, you know what I mean? And the best clarification came from my own colleague here at S.STREET Media, Stuck B, Sean P's brother, who had Aguilar on his show, shortly after to clear it all up. I think it was the second show of the Fuck Outta Here show. You know, so go look that up. Go look that up to see the details of that, right? Do denounce that. Now, if we actually studied what and whom we don't know before we pick a side in the battle, right, then we are better off. You know, it's a habit that saves lives, not just makes you a refined fucking listener, you know? So the best advantage for a journalist is what I call point of impact, right? Point of impact, as I see it, means being there when the music is just out, seeing the artist then there, you know what I mean? However, we have not everybody has that, so we have what's an embedded journalist today, which is good and bad, and we also have unfortunately, the overly plugged listener that is writing only the social media proclamations of the music and listens poorly. So now in a beef, right? Remember, it's okay to pick the side of what you see as the greater musician of talent and even integrity. So say Rakim Allah, right? He spit at Tekashi's face, right? Just for breathing. Rakim is unfortunately in the wrong, right? But I pick Rakim and I roll with Rakim because I don't give a fuck. It's Rakim. So it's like in real life, I'll give you a real life example. KRS-One threw PM Dawn off the stage. It was wrong. Yeah, he shouldn't have done that. It was a near Trumpian act. You know what I mean? But his intention and his legacy to that intention of preserving real hip hop when it was claimed, we respect too much to give a fuck about PM Dawn getting an unfair punishment. We don't give a fuck about PM Dawn. You know what I mean? So what happens is this, right? So what happens is this. Now, most pick West Side Gun over AG Aguilar because they love Gun's music more, but that's got to be claimed to me because Gun's legacy in hip hop is just beginning. You know what I mean? It really is the cult persona that he has now. It's one of absolute, it isn't one of absolute integrity, and even has many holes that may say otherwise become larger, right? And we go along with that, right? We don't know yet, right? So what I'm saying is know the difference ultimately in how we decide. For example, any shit song Nas put together against Jay-Z in 2001 was going to win for me. Jay was and still is, despite the promo campaign, is the hypocritical and illogical embrace as the people's billionaire. I don't know what the fuck that means. The people's billionaire. The nigga's the people's billionaire, right? But back then, he was the epitome of crossover rap. If you think not, then you need to go and take your fucking time machine and go back, right? He was the epitome of crossover rap and the diluting of all things good. So Nas needed to only come back respectfully to win, and he did, right? Now, away from the fails of the inventor of the Pretty Hiccup, Jigga Man, Aguilar's Mercy for the Weak, delivered in the character of Argyle Ghoul, which is like the Batman villain, right? It's a strong, sharp work. You know what I mean? It's all produced by Aguilar. There's that, again, I love that subtle expertise in tracks, like the meeting of that guitar lick and the hi-hats to let the snare smack and impersonate my character, or the crescendo that intros Argyle Ghoul's the man with that devious bass line slop. The vocals are precise. They're equalized right. You hear everything crisp. You know what I mean? He has a raspy voice, but he never has to yell and crack it. You know what I mean? It's just a very consistent effort. You know, it's dope. So, for that, go to aguilar.bandcamp.com. Now, to end, the last one that I'm going to talk about today, West Side Gun. There's so many problems that West Side Gun brings up, though. He's a stylist, but the more he rhymes, the more that he's only a stylist. You know what I mean? And also, too, it also brings up this thing of the entire custy culture. You know what I mean? It's like his love for hip-hop is very clear to me, I think. But his own self-promotion is literally part of that cult, His Twitter is like a masturbation session, They're like nut tweets, I'm the greatest. I'm like GOAT level already, and it isn't that yet. You know what I'm saying? The truth is that Gun's music is really an exercise of style over substance and has activated every niche he can. The logos, the artwork, imagery, relatable sessions such as wrestling, soundbite explanation, musical sound familiarity. You see how I said that? I didn't say biting. I said musical sound familiarity. We're going to call that shit that now, right? Instead of biting, because it's really not. It's on the verge. It's a thin line, right, between love and hate right there, right? But he's done it so well that since Fly God, that his official debut in 2016, now we see a chink in the armor, because since then he's released so much work that there's chinks in the armor that are just showing that he doesn't have much to say now. And, I could get more into it. I could say regarding Gun and Aguilar beef, I had no opinion, by the way, because it was all muddled of what we were going to analyze. It was just, the beef was unclear. But, and I only spoke to Aguilar, so that's why I detailed Aguilar in this respect, as far as his thoughts on P. But, Supreme Blind tells like any gangster's work. Anyone that criticizes is always dismissed as a square. So even though technically I'm not actually a square, I'm also not a criminal. So I still end up being a square in this respect. And this is one of the problems, though, because it's like hiding behind the content that you don't really have. So you hide behind the subject matter, but you don't have the content to go with it. So what I saw here is that in his music, West Side Gun has neither pioneered nor mastered the sample loop with no drums. He did not invent this, didn't pioneer it. And on this album, though, he's not really mastering it. I'm going to give some examples, right? There's weaknesses for actual bars is magnified because it feels like he's cheating. He's literally chanting through songs. His lyrics are essentially, 1, begin with what you're holding and doing, guns, drugs, insert detail. 2, no one can match this. Battle bar. That's the battle bar. No one can match this. They can't. They won't. Proclamations, da-da-da. Then number 3, how he finished off and rode into the sunset, right? Or as many songs or just chimes and croons, overloads, the backdrops would add, ad lib sound effects, doom doom doom. How many doom doom dooms we heard in the album, right? The the problem is not him cheating on purpose. The mean. This is my mean possibility. Like me being mean. This is the possibility. Unfortunately, I think is that his average skill is not equipped past that debut stage. A lot of MCs are great for the debut. They're great to tell you how banging they are and exalt themselves. That's why it's so good to feature on a track like, yo, we got an upcoming nigga right here. Boom. But then after that, they don't really have much detail. That's why, like, when we look for like the guys that could really be like Mobb Deep, we're probably looking in Griselda more at Conway or even Benny, you know. But we're not looking at West Side Gun. But every time that happens with an MC, they go, what do they say in an interview? They say, well, I'm not really an MC. So what the fuck are you? You know what I mean? You're not an MC. So now, but I don't get to judge you because you don't MC. You know what I mean? And we hear that today. That's today's thing. Like, yo, you sing lousy, but you go, well, I'm not a singer. I just sang these songs and you fucking bought it. So a lot of it gets dismissed. So we don't really get to, it's a cop out basically. You know what I mean? And I think this. I also think that the sound that they use, using the soul samples, but also when they use breaks, it really is in the Wu / Mobb Deep / Wu sound familiarity range. Derringer's best work to me is hearkening that. You know what I mean? It's just that it's so well done. We see a crispy thickness in it that's very hard to do, and probably something you couldn't do back then with the type of equipment they were using. So it lends itself to a new way. Personally, I find a big problem with the Chris Benoit imagery. You know what I'm saying? I don't see how, just like I had a problem with Daytona's album cover. These are drug dealers. They're selling drugs, though. What does a legendary soul singer dying of a drug overdose have to do with your prowess on the street, selling, pitching? And what does a man that kills his own family say about you as a killer? What does it say? I don't know. You know what I'm saying? So the dehumanizing approach is great for the niche crossover market. You know what I mean? But I don't care for it. I'm not a wrestling fan, so it only perplexes me. You know what I mean? But ultimately, there's more to say about this. Maybe I'll have to write about this. There's limitations. I thought if you want to hear limitation, listen to Rick Martel with Rock Marciano. Marciano produces by just looping a sample. And when he lets the soul song, that sample, go into its chorus. West Side Gun is holding his own, but when the soul chorus comes in, it throws him off. It throws him completely off and he gets drowned out. You know what I mean? And you can hear it easily. Whereas on the track titled West Side, which is obviously West Side Gun, it goes into my example of the MC that is great at debuting himself. Like, here's how I grab my nuts, my nigga. You know what I'm saying? And then that's it. You know what I'm saying? So it's a good album, but there's lots of flaws. And he did challenge himself. Doing songs with Elzai is a fucking challenge, though. You know what I mean? Because Elzai is his handles are way better than yours. You know what I'm saying? So when we look at that, so he hung in there too. But on that song, he drowned out his own verse by over ad-libbing. It's like 1,000 doom doom dooms. So all in all, it's a good album, though. It's not the hyped album that people were talking about. And there's much more to say. And in an era where there's a lot of crime rappers, you got Crime Apple, Hus Kingpin, you got Smooth, you got up-and-comers like Ito. Just chanting on a track, that's not gonna make a legendary album. It's not. It's gonna make a good album. And we are pretty much run out of time, though. I've had so much to say about these records that I didn't even get to all the other records. But we'll pick one a day, one a show if we can't get into everything, and we'll build on them and go in. So until that next time, there'll be more of a lot more stories to tell, more of a lot more writings to recite, and more of a lot more records to rewind and reminisce. Until then, I'm your host, Sunez, and as always, the Power Right Show is a never respect fake broadcast. Peace.
It's cool.
How cool is a man?
It's cool, nigga.
How cool is a man? How cool is a man?
Yeah,
All over the land.
yeah.
How cool is a man? All over the land.
Yo, bitch mad cause I'm so not traditional. Music you like, I don't even like to listen to. 1 minute they ratchet, next minute they getting spiritual. Dudes too hysterical, I'm 100 miles ahead of you. God like pinnacle, y'all nothing angelical. Botanical flowers, see me smoking on the medical. Guns and butter, the order is alphabetical. You say it in Italy, but the mean's hypothetical. I'm telling you, yeah. I'm known to bust dope moves. Never get high off your supply, that's the coke rule. Never get wise on a guy from the old school. You nobody until somebody knows you. 6 feet deep in the dirt, standing over you. Forces of the underworld, yeah, take control of you. Ag out, goon, fucked up, it's time to show and prove. The dark side of this life, that's for you to choose.
How cool is a man?
Bitch,
How cool is a man?
it's cool, it's
How
cool,
cool is a man?
it's cool, nigga.
How cool is a man? How cool is a man?
Yeah,
All over the land.
yeah.
How cool is a man? All over the land.
Yeah, we took the frequency way to another level. Filling with the big gun, I'm chasing after the devil. Robbing banks with a tank, cause the funds is embezzled. Larry Johnson, Stacey Orwell, we running like rebels. Beef ready to settle with the heaviest metal. You dug your own block, we ain't in need of a shovel. I don't want what you got, but I can take it from you. And once you call the cops, I'm gorilla aping on you. Before I put it on you, know I'm here to warn you. Fucking Neo or Morpheus going matrix on you. Sizzling like gristle pigs turning bacon on you. Your own loved ones, they be flaking on you. Some killers is hunting, some killers waiting on you. Hanging with superstars, that's when they baiting on you. Riding with real G's, that's when we draping on you. Cobra Command, these niggas is still snaking on you.
How
Cool,
cool is a man?
bitch.